Your problem is you're looking too wide. If you narrow your focus and you stay focused on a market for 6 months, you're going to know when an opportunity comes up. It's going to give you confidence to act. You're going to be comparing four families to four families to four families all in the same market, and you're going to feel much more confident making the decision.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if you're an avid listener to this show, you already know what I'm about to ask for, right? I want some feedback, some honest feedback. Leave us a rating and review so we can understand what's working for you, but also get any insights of what we can do to make this show work harder for your investing goals. Now, listen, if you haven't done so, or this is your first time checking us out, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, we got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Jonathan Bombaci. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, Jonathan Bombaci is the founder of Candor Realty. They have a team. They have a team of 35 plus investor focused agents, property management company, construction management company, and a large scale investment portfolio of over 550 units across the United States. Let's welcome to the show, Jonathan Bombaci.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Absolutely, John. It's great to talk to you today. I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah. So I was a W-2 employee, got into real estate early when I graduated college because I literally couldn't buy anything except the multifamily. Kind of fell in love with real estate. After about 10 years in corporate, went into real estate full time, founded Candor Realty. We realized that there was a niche in the marketplace where you have residential agents that are really good at helping clients with emotions and buying the forever home. And then you have commercial agents that are really good at big stuff. But the 2 to 12 units we found was a massive gap. Me as a buyer myself, as an investor myself, I would kind of find myself working with odd agents through odd transactions. And so when we founded Candor Realty, we were investor focused agent focusing on 2 to 20 unit type transactions. We help about 100 people a year buy their first investment property in very expensive Massachusetts and now inflating New Hampshire as real estate prices go up. And so a lot of people buying their first property, a lot of people house hacking, a lot of people kind of getting to real estate for the first time. And it's frankly our passion is kind of helping people with that first or second transaction and then kind of letting them grow because the message is always, hey, you need us to help you on the first one because you don't know what you're doing. We'd love to help you on the second or the third one, but eventually you're going to outgrow us and you're not going to need to use us anymore. And that's awesome. Stay a part of the network, come to the meetups, coach people and grow people. But I think people kind of like that because a lot of agents are like, nope, you're going to use me forever. And our agents are very much like, yeah, you're going to use us so you don't need us anymore. And then hopefully you call us occasionally.
I love that, man. You talked about, coming up in corporate, doing that for about 10 years before full-time making that transition into real estate, founding Candor Realty. And as an investor yourself, you realize there was a gap between, the residential side and the commercial side, really that 2 to 12 unit space. And I love what you talked about that, some folks are looking for, that agent's going to bring them a deal all the time. And other folks are only going to buy one home, maybe every 5 to 10 years. So as a real estate agent, understanding where you add value and where you help them. Let's talk about that some more because I think that's really interesting. I have a good friend in Chicago, and this is kind of the area she focuses on as well. And you're right, there is such a gap between kind of the residential agent who doesn't really understand or run the numbers, right? They're looking at a house based on how big it is and the kitchen and the finishes and with the school district. And those things are great, right? But as real estate investors, we're trying to make sure this thing is going to be a profitable investment. And of course, on the commercial side, many of them won't come down to, a 2 unit or 4 unit. They don't even play in that space. So it's really hard to find an agent who actually understands how to buy smaller properties, but do it based on the investment. Talk to me more about kind of that gap in that window or that you see from the residential agent who focuses on that retail buyer essentially versus that commercial agent who focuses on those pure commercial investments?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to empathy. And really what I mean is residential agents, like one of their strongest focal points is empathy. They can get along with their clients, they can walk them through our house, they can talk about the kitchen and the direction and all those, like they can build relationships. And a lot of times residential buyers, they like to work with their agents, and their agents have strong empathy. My agents are frankly horrible agents. Like they failed out of the residential world. They have no empathy. They want to get in and out. They want to work with clients. They're much more analytical. And so when they go and they talk to clients, it's very much it's a business decision, right? Like, what are your goals? What are your objectives? I'm not going to take you to look at this house because this doesn't meet what you told me. And a lot of residential agents, they can't get over that. On our side, it's like, hey, we don't ask people to sign things. There's no commitment. You work with us as long as you want. We work with you as long as you want. But this is a partnership, and it's got to make sense. And so my agents are very good at kind of cutting through the bull, and making sure that we're only showing houses that meet the strategy you define to us, and protecting that all the way through. And if you don't run the numbers on a house, we're not going to take you to see the house. But it's very much a business to business transaction, as opposed to on the residential side, it's very much a business to consumer transaction. And you're operating under that. The customer is always right. My agents are always like, the customer doesn't know what they're doing, and we have to educate them. But like, we're not going to default to them being right. If we disagree, we're going to push our opinion all the way through the transaction, even if that means, hey, you shouldn't buy this house. And we have those conversations quite often.
Man, you said something that was definitely quote worthy. This is not a matter of the customer's always right. You're saying the customer doesn't know what they're doing, and helping them understand what they're doing in that process is so key. Going back, when you talk about helping, 100 investors a year buy their first investment property, I mean, that's someone every 3 to 4 days. Every 3 to 4 days on average, you are helping someone new become a real estate investor, not just a real estate owner, right? But a real estate investor. And that's one of the biggest challenges for new investors, right? And it's one of the reasons residential agents get burnt out working with new investors. And it's one of the reasons commercial agents are like, I'm not dealing with y'all because they don't understand certain things, right? And it's hard to be in that position as a client when you don't really know what you're doing, right? You want to invest, but you don't know how to invest. So really relying on them doesn't make sense. So it may sound harsh at first what you said, but in reality, it makes a lot of sense, right? That agent, you're really a partner almost, right? You're going above and beyond just saying, all right, hey, take a look at these properties. Let me know what you think. You are helping them really understand how to think about it analytically and as an investor, not necessarily as that residential buyer. You also said that, hey, if they don't run the numbers, we're not going to take them to see that property. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think that's an interesting, again, relationship and dynamic of the relationship to say, nah, you got to do certain things before we're gonna take action on our side. Talk to me more.
Yeah, so the explanation there is, we're only going to take you to properties that meet your criteria. So if you don't run the numbers, how do you know if the property meets your criteria? And then the agents are kind of trained where they say, hey, all right, great, you want to go look at this property? Do you run the numbers? Yes, I run the numbers. One, the agent can kind of poke holes in it because they can tell real quick if this is going to work or not. But then two, they kind of touch them when they get there. So like the answer is, hey, what do you think of the property? Does it meet your expectations? Was it better than your expectations? Was it in better condition? Was there anything about the property you don't like? And if the answer is no, then it's like, okay, so then why aren't we putting in an offer? And so if you go to the house with an expectation, hey, this thing cash flows well based on the numbers, and I'm excited to see it. And at the end of the tour, this is in better condition and a better location than I thought. So it's like, okay, so let's put an offer. And if the answer is no, then we got to dig a little bit deeper and figure out why. Like, is it a timing thing? Are we a little bit afraid, or like what's going on? But if the answer is the numbers worked before we showed up and the property's in better condition than you thought, we should be ready to rock and roll. And if not, that's okay. But we have to go deep and figure out why. Because I'm not going to take you to see the next house if you're not willing to put an offer here, considering that this met your objectives and frankly was better than you expected coming in.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, again, for listeners who are thinking about this or hearing this, and maybe this is different than your experience, you also said something else that I think is worth repeating here. You said that you don't make these buyers sign an exclusive contract with you. So you don't get paid unless a deal happens in this situation. So it's important for your agents to make sure they're maximizing their time. And it's not like the residential world where this person has signed a 6 month exclusive agreement to represent you. So they're going to go around and showing you different properties as you pick one because they know they've got you locked in for 6 months. You don't really have that, contract in place. So this is really more about, hey, we believe we add enough value where you're going to want to work with us to help you get across the finish line. And part of that process, from your standpoint, is making sure you help them get clear on their criteria. They're taking the appropriate steps to analyze this deal and not making an emotional decision. Uh, you know, I'm sure you talk to other brokers and agents across the country who either work, whether they exclusively work with kind of this 2 to 12 unit buyer, that first time investor buyer, or they just randomly from time to time get someone who's interested in investment. Talk to me about some of the conversations you have and maybe some of the other challenges you see other agents and other brokers make when dealing with first time owners or first time investors, I should say.
So I still take the first time phone calls, right? So I think I have 3 today with first time people that are looking to do it. I like onboarding new clients because it's frankly a passion of mine. I got a million other things to do, but I like spending that 30 minutes with somebody. And the biggest thing I get from people in those 30 minutes is it's like, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a cash flowing property anywhere in Massachusetts or New Hampshire." And I say, "Okay, great. Like, I got a great 4 unit in Springfield." And they're like, "Well, not Springfield. Like, that's too far out. It's a little bit rough. Like, I don't want to buy in Springfield." So, like, okay, so now we got to go back and fix what you just said to me because you essentially lied, right? Where you said I would buy it anywhere, and I kind of throw out a test, and almost always they back down. And the thing is that we always nail down. We always try to nail down location because everyone always says I want to buy something anywhere, and they think the wider their location, with an hour to Boston, I'm looking in New Bedford, Worcester, 6 other cities. I'm looking for anything. And it's like, well, you're never going to buy something if that's what you're doing because it's hard to compare markets. You're going to get paralysis by analysis. You're not going to be able to look at a 3 family in Boston and a 6 family in Worcester and make a decision. If you see both of those things in the same weekend, I guarantee you the only action is you're not going to take action because they're not comparable. And so I always say, hey, you got to narrow your focus to a 10-mile radius, one city. What do you know? Where do you live? Where do you work? Where do you like to go on vacation? Like trying to nail down what it is. And if now I get you to commit to, all right, great, we're going to spend 6 months focusing on 4 families in Lowell. That's what makes sense based off your criteria. That what makes sense based off the location. That what makes sense based off of your budget. Give me 6 months to help you find a 4 family within 10 miles of Lowell. And if it doesn't work, we'll move on to the other market. And a lot of these people, they've been looking for years. They've been looking for 18 months. They've gone through a lot of agents, and it makes them a little bit uncomfortable. I say, like, your problem isn't that your problem is you're looking too wide. If you narrow your focus and you stay focused on a market for 6 months, you're going to know when an opportunity comes up. It's going to give you confidence to act. You're going to be comparing 4 families to 4 families to 4 families all in the same market, and you're going to feel much more confident making the decision. But if you jump around, you're never going to make a decision because you're going to be chasing that shiny object syndrome. And like that conversation normally like is a little bit different. But again, like I'm not going to take you to look at a house in Worcester and a house in Lowell. Like we're going to have to narrow the focus right out of the gate. And then the other thing about us is we have now we're up to 40 agents, but the agents focus on the area. So like I think Andrew Freed was on here not that long ago. He's our Worcester team lead. Sabrina is our Lowell team lead. Todd is our Boston team lead. And so we always partner the agents with the team that is focusing on that market. So they're looking at properties in Worcester with an agent that's investing in Worcester. That agent isn't going to take them out in Lowell. They're going to send them to the agent in Lowell. So you're always looking at properties with an agent investing in that market because this street is different than that street. And it's important when you're kind of starting this to make sure that you have an agent that knows the market you're investing into because things can change very rapidly in a city, even if you're not far apart. And so one of the discussions is I need to know what agent to put you with. In order for that to happen, we need to narrow the focus to a point that we can assign you an agent that can help you in the market. And once they do that, I mean, almost always we see a lot of progress right out of the gate. But the hard part is really focusing them because it's so easy to say a broad statement and get very distracted by it.
Would you say that that location and kind of getting clear on the location where an investor is looking is really the number one kind of priority or the number one mistake you see new investors making?
Absolutely, right? Like, I mean, that's the
Yeah,
biggest thing. I mean, everyone knows what's the most important thing in real estate.
that's it. And I think it's
Everyone knows
important.
that, right?
We all know it's location, right? But I think it's important because, to your point, I think so many people come in and they want to be broad and loose so they don't minimize their opportunities, and they fail to recognize that actually by being so broad, you eliminate the chance to learn about these markets and to compare based on the actual experiences you have, and it's so critical because if you can lock down on your location, your current market criteria, now you're going to build confidence because you're looking at deal after deal after deal. You can see what did that deal trade for. You could see, how many, what are the rents in this area? Hey, there's a property you looked at, last month, across the street from that, and it was getting XYZ for rent. So now you have your own database, and that's going to allow you to build confidence so you'll recognize a deal or an opportunity. And then to your point, the second part of that is you can also now pair them with that local expert. So in your case, we're talking about agents, but whoever it is you're working with, the clearer you are on your location and your criteria, well, now you can find those experts who can help you navigate that landscape. Some markets are street to street, some are, sub market to sub market, but you really need to understand that, hey, just because this deal is, whether it be a six cap or whatever the rents are in the area, that could be for the market at the market level or even the sub-market level, but there may be a different perspective locally based on things you have no idea about. Could be school districts, could be, you know, proximity to a park, could be reputation. There are a lot of different factors. So you really want that person who has that local market knowledge to help you navigate that landscape. So I love that. Um, if you were talking to agents, not necessarily the investor, but to agents who represent these buyers, these investors, what piece of advice would you give them?
To agents.
Yes.
So normally I would say, hey, make sure they run the numbers before you show up at the property. Make sure that they look online and you have conversations before taking them out. And then at the end of every property visit, have a debrief with them. Like, it's so easy in this industry to run from client to client to client, but that first weekend is critical. If you can't talk at the property because it's a 4 unit and it's a freaking madhouse, go grab a coffee next door, talk to them, and figure out what went well, what they like, what they didn't like, because you have to kind of build that relationship early, and it's easy to lose track of it in the moment. But if you don't get feedback from them after the initial showing, like right out of the gate, they're gonna think about it, and they're either gonna hold back or they're gonna make something up. You have to get it when it's raw. And it's okay if you tour a property and say, well, that was a complete shithole. You're not allowed to buy this property, but what did you learn? What didn't you like? What did you see? What didn't you see? But you need to have that conversation right away, because otherwise it's going to get glossed over either one way or another. And that the more raw you can get that feedback early on, the easier it's going to be to do your job and make sure you don't show them another property with the same thing that they didn't like.
I love that. And I think to your point, going back to, these are newer investors, when we're doing something new, our brains are built to just retreat, right? Not to change. So if you see something, even if you like it and you want to invest, you let some time fester there and you'll just start making up reasons why you didn't like a property or don't want to pull the trigger. So it's really good to have that debrief as quickly as possible and just get that reassurance that that investor is not making a mistake. You ran the numbers. The property looks like it's going to work. Move forward and take action. So really love that. Let's talk about kind of your business more holistically, right? So I mentioned working with new investors. You also have the property management side of it. You have the construction management side of it. You have over 500 units in your own portfolio. Talk to us about scaling that portfolio and the different arms of the business.
Yeah, so they pretty much they came at a from each other, essentially. So we grew the investment portfolio first. We were working with a great third party property manager after blowing through a couple other ones, and then they were actually going to shut down business because the owner got sick. And so we were kind of faced with the decision of either moving 100+ units to a new third party property management company, or what we ended up doing was going to the owner and saying, hey, can we just have your employees, because you're going to be laying them off in 30 days. And so we ended up kind of taking their employees and setting up an in-house property management company very quickly, because it was needed. That kind of grew through acquisitions. We ended up keeping it just internally, only on our own stuff for a while. And then COVID hit, and we couldn't find a contractor to do freaking anything. And so then we kind of found a couple of contractors that we like doing business with, and we just brought them in house to do our own construction management. At a certain point, the entities were established enough. We had enough credibility. We felt comfortable with it that we're able to open it up to clients. So anyone that was buying property with us, hey, if you need a property manager, you can interview the management company, go and interview a couple other management companies too, and make your best choice. If you pick us, great. If you pick somebody else, also great. But we end up kind of offering it as a resource, but like not tying it in. And then same thing from the construction side, where it's like, hey, it's really hard to get a construction quote when you have something under contract, or to do a 203K, or to do some of these odd products. So we'll send out RGC. We'll take care of that for you. You can use us, or you can use somebody else. But essentially, we had that service in house and made it easier for the agents, made it easier for the clients. We got some business out of it, but it was really kind of meant to solve problems we were seeing in the marketplace. It's hard to find a good property manager that you can trust. It's hard to get bids on something before you own it. And so it's like, bringing that in house, we're able to kind of offer a little bit more services than like a true third party would want to offer.
Yeah, so your goal there was really to solve your own in-house needs, not necessarily to grow a third-party company to say, okay, hey, let's build this property management arm or let's build this construction arm. It was more so, hey, we've got this portfolio of units. Our PM is closing shop. Still need to figure out a solution here. Why don't we go ahead and bring that in-house, right? You
Mhm.
already went through a number of property management options, found one you liked, so you wanted to kind of stick with those employees. And then kind of a similar thing happened with the construction side of it. I think that's really important to understand is that, I don't know if I've ever met someone who got into real estate and said, I don't really want to invest. I want to own a property management company. So most people want to have a
100%.
portfolio, right? Build a portfolio, and you kind of back into, the PM side of it based on needs or opportunities that come up or whatever it is. So that makes sense. If you were, if you had someone who was looking at the process that you took or the pathway that you took and had some properties right now, wasn't really pleased with their current property management or maybe needed to make a change and was deciding whether or not to build out their own property management company, what feedback or advice or questions would you have them ask before making that decision?
So I guess so I guess the biggest struggle would be why, right? The question is, why do you want to make the management company? If the answer is to save money, then that's probably not the right answer. If the answer is to have more control, to be able to see what's going on in my portfolio and be able to respond faster, then that makes more sense to me. The management company, frankly, it's break even at best. Property management's really hard. You have to keep the fees light because you're essentially taking money out of properties and putting in a management company, and you want as much money rolling through your properties as possible. So the management company is not, it's not profitable. It breaks even best of days. And so if someone wants to build a property management company for profit, I would kind of push back a little bit and say like it's going to be really hard. That's not the best place to put your time. The amount of energy and effort and employees it takes to run a management company. If your goal is solely based off of dollars and cents, you're going to burn out and you're going to hate your life. But if your goal is to have the property management company to better serve your assets, to better manage your properties, to have more insight into what's going on, I'm 100% for it. Same thing on the agent business. I have this conversation with investors all the time where it's like, should I get my real estate license? And the answer is, well, why do you want to get your real estate license? If the answer is because I don't want to pay commissions, then you probably shouldn't get your real estate license. Like the goal, like you're going to make a mistake where it's going to cost you a lot of money if you're not dedicated to it. But if your goal is to help other people invest in real estate, you're really interested in it, you want to learn how to be an agent and help people and teach them the things that you wish you knew going on, I'm 100% for you getting your real estate license. It's kind of like the same thing on the management side. If it's just to save money, you're gonna die. It's gonna kill you. If it's because it betters the rest of your business and there's a passion there that's gonna tie in long term, then I'm supportive of it. But I see so many people trying to like penny pinch and they think that's the way to do it. And it's like it's gonna kill you if that's the goal.
Yeah, I heard you say if you are looking to launch a property management company or even get your real estate license to save money, that's a bad reason to do it. But if it's to serve your assets or to network, to teach others, but basically coming from a place of service, then it's going to be a much better idea. And you're 100% for it if you're coming from a place of service versus saving. So that's a great way to think about it for anyone who is considering, hey, should I bring this in house or should I continue to work with a third party vendor to help me reach these goals there? What was your biggest challenge in bringing on the property management company and or the construction company?
People. I mean, like, human capital is the biggest challenge. Finding the right people, getting the right people in the right seats is always the hardest part. Um, well, luckily we had people we could trust kind of on the team. We were able to kind of move people around and make it work. But I mean, that's always been the struggle, is just kind of making sure you have the right people in the right seat doing the right thing. And we weren't doing it right for a long time. We've solved for it a little bit, where we now have some virtual assistants down in Argentina that support the property managers. But I mean, the hard part is just the human capital that it goes into running these things. Because if you don't have enough people, the service suffers. If you have too many people, the company suffers. And so it's a balance of trying to make sure you have the right folks doing the right job.
As you look at getting the right people in the right jobs, what process have you changed or filter or criteria have you changed to make sure you're doing a better job of that?
I've taken myself out of most of the hiring processes. You have to know your strengths, right? I like people. I'm a yes person. I like to give people a chance. So I've over time we've kind of had people prove themselves and move up, and now I have someone that's in charge of the property manager company, someone that's in charge of the development company, and I have essentially my executive assistant doing all hiring in terms of screening, getting people in, and then letting the heads of each of the companies make their own hires. I found that I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. I tend to be too soft and want to give people a chance, even if they don't have the skills or the expertise or the time to do what the job demands. And so by kind of delegating that and letting each business kind of dictate who they want to hire and how they want to hire it's made it a lot easier. I found if I pick somebody and they don't like them, it makes it a little bit hard. But if they pick somebody, then they work really hard to make sure that I like them. And that little bit of a shift has made a huge difference in the way that we hire people and the way people come on board.
I love it. I love it. Great tips there. For those folks who are looking to scale a portfolio, we talked about helping those 100 people get their first investment. For those folks who are now looking for that second, third, fourth investment, what advice would you give them to scaling that portfolio?
Um, I mean, the hardest part early on is probably capital, right? And so I know that that's where a lot of people struggle, where you do the first one, the low down payment, or you have money set aside for it. At a certain point, if you're only using your own capital, you're gonna run out of money. And so you have to learn how to work with others. Partnerships are huge. One of the things I always say, and I push hard, is real estate's a team sport. The stronger your team, the easier this thing gets. And so you need to be real honest about what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and focus on growing your strengths. I don't care about your weaknesses. Focus on growing your strengths and be the strongest you can at what you like to do and what you're good at. Find other people to complement your weaknesses with their strengths. The stronger your team, the easier this thing gets. That includes raising money, raising capital, managing properties, doing construction, whatever it is. Focus on what you're strong at, find other people to do the rest of it. And then over time, you'll grow that team and you'll be able to kind of solve for stuff. If you're really good at raising money, then that's awesome. If you're really good at managing properties, then you can focus on that. But don't put yourself in a situation where you're extending, trying to do something you don't enjoy, because people are going to sense that right away, and it's going to be very difficult for you to grow that. Corporate is always, what are your three biggest strengths? What are your three big weaknesses? How do you grow your weaknesses? Real estate, it's like, grow your strengths, get other people to complement your weaknesses, and then you can run harder, faster, longer, and you're not going to have to worry about doing stuff that you frankly aren't good at or don't have a passion for.
I love it. That's great advice. And for those who want to learn more, you can follow John on Instagram. We're going to make sure we put a link to his handle there in the show notes. John, we're going to transition to our round of insights. You ready?
Sure.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Um, Yeah, so probably a failure early on was we did this big project in Gardner where it was this first time we did a ground up construction, and it wasn't really ground up, it was a fire building, and we were learning it. We bought it cheap, we did a lot of work on it, and we underestimated a lot of our construction costs, and we ended up blowing through the budget by a couple $100,000, and it was awful. We That was one of the projects that we lost money on, and we don't like losing money, and we're bad at losing money. But that was a tough one. As a result of that, though, we were able to restore a vacant building. We were able to get to know the city. We were able to get to know city leadership, the building commissioner, and that project actually spun off. And now Gardner is our second home. That was the first building we did, and it was awful. We lost money on that transaction. A lot of people would say, "Hey, I'm never going back to Gardner because I lost $200,000 there." But now we own 130 units in Gardner. We're the largest property owner in Gardner. We got to know the city. We got to know the surrounding area. We got to know the community, and like we've made up for that loss early on because we kind of reinvested in a market that we were excited about. But frankly, the first property just was a mistake.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
So it's a little bit dumb, but I mean, Mile IQ has saved me a ton of freaking money, both for myself, property management, agents, everybody. It tracks your mileage. It's a relatively cheap app that you can put on your phone. It's made life a lot easier in terms of the way we track our maintenance techs and property managers and everything. So instead of doing like the air tags and trying to track vehicles, we just do, we reimburse for mileage, and we let people submit their expense reports. And that's kind of changed the way that we track everything that's going on in a portfolio, as well as keep track of a lot of stuff for tax purposes. It's kind of a stupid little app, but it's made a huge difference in the way that we manage our driving, which is pretty significant.
Give me the book you recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
So I like 4 Hour Work Week, and it's not really a real estate book. A lot of people that have read it, they kind of nod, and it's a great book. A lot of it's kind of dated; it doesn't quite do it. But one thing in there is that book one gave me the confidence to quit my W-2. There's an exercise in there where it's like, hey, I know you're scared. I know this is gonna suck, and you have a lot of reasons not to do it. So sit down and figure out, all right, if you quit your W-2 and you do this, what's the worst case scenario? And chances are you can go back in 6 months and get another job. And if your worst case scenario is you end up working at McDonald's, like that's still better than 90% of the rest of the world. So like, calm down. And then it's like, now imagine your best case scenario. And it's like, that's pretty awesome. Chances are you're gonna be somewhere in the middle. So like, stop being scared and just go freaking do it, because the worst case scenario is you're right back here in 6 to 12 months. And like the best case scenario is you never go back into the office. And so that exercise was huge for me. That's what kind of gave me the motivation to do what it is that I'm doing. But the book is great in terms of like figuring out who can do something just as good, delegating as much as you can, trying to get out of the day to day. But that one exercise that literally gave me the courage to quit the W-2 and jump in full time.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Probably I spend some time every morning just kind of planning my day and reflecting. And the biggest thing that I always put in there is what's the most important thing I need to get done today. That balanced everything else. And sometimes that's not it's not a very long thing. It's just what's the most important thing. And as long as I can get the most important thing done early on, then the rest of the day, I can be as productive or as unproductive as I want. But what's the one thing I need to get done today that makes tomorrow and the rest of it easier? And just making sure that gets done, because I know that there's a lot of times where it's like you're busy all day, and then it's like, well, what did I really accomplish? And so like pick that most important thing early on, get it done right away. And now at the end of the day, you can be busy and frantic and putting out fires, but you can say, well, at least I got that thing accomplished. And that makes the rest of the week easier.
What's your number one insight for getting started as a new investor?
I'd say that the biggest thing is, and I think we talked about it a little bit, but you gotta get very, very focused. You have to know your market, location, type of product. Do you want a 3-family, 4-family, 5-family, off-street parking, on-street parking, whatever it is. But the more specific you can get, the easier this thing's going to become. And I know that sounds a little odd, but if you're very, very specific, now all you're doing is you're just waiting for the right opportunity to come up, and then you can go after it. But if you're spending too much time analyzing things and going after too many wide things, you're never going to be in that situation. Ideally, what I like people to do is I like them to get so specific that all we're doing is we're just sitting around waiting. But when that opportunity comes on that meets all your criteria, you can act confidently, and that prevents you from overpaying. That prevents you from making a bad mistake. That prevents you from getting emotionally attached because you're so focused on the end product that you're more likely to make the right decision throughout the process.
Let's lighten the mood. You are in the Boston area. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Around here, I mean, a lot of times we just go out to Tavern in the Square. There's a lot of them. They're all over the place. I do business meetings there. It's a pretty comfortable pub type setting. Um, it works. It's like medium fare, not too expensive. It's perfect for having a beer, talking real estate, and lunch. And so that tends to be like my go-to whenever I'm out and about meeting with clients. Is just kind of go to the local tavern in the square, and that way it's a comfortable experience, and it's pretty relaxed.
I love it. Sounds like a great option if you're up in the Boston area. You gave us some great stuff, John. You talked about kind of your background, becoming an investor yourself, building up your own portfolio, and recognizing that there is a sweet spot from 2 to 12 units where residential agents really aren't equipped. They're so empathetic that they can't help those actual investors. And commercial real estate invest or agents don't really want to deal with them, right? They don't have the patience to help a new investor on those smaller properties. So this is kind of where you focus with your team of 35 plus agents, really helping those new investors, helping 100 annually become new real estate investors. So I think that's really cool. Again, for folks who want to learn more, they can follow you on Instagram. We will make sure we put a link to your handle in the show notes. John, I want to thank you again for coming on Multifamily Insights, being a great guest, and we hope you have a great day.